process around that, because that does feel like the most urgent. Okay, so let's get into then item 8, which is our adoption of the sport investment plan, and that's from memory. Is that Paul Marriott Lloyd? No,
Yeah.
it is.
So Kat will come and Kat's
Oh, Kat's going to Katanaina. Welcome. Oh, and Dave.
Introduction. Okay, the report seeks your agreement to adopt the sport investment plan, increasing Aucklanders' participation in sport. The plan will help us respond to growth and changing sport needs, and is based on committee decisions, research, and community feedback. This committee approved the draft plan last December for public consultation. During the public consultation, we received positive feedback from the sports sector and the public. The main concern is about how the plan will be applied in practice to cater for different community and local needs. We will set up a project team to assist adoption across council and answer inquiries. The next step is to adopt the high-level principles and new projects from August, with full implementation stage over the next 3 to 5 years, depending on the scale and nature of the change. Thank you.
Okay. Kat, Dave? It is pretty clear. It's been canvassed most strongly with our local boards, and we've taken the one critical bit of feedback from Māngere or Tahuhu. Other boards happy? Any questions? Councillor Newman.
My question relates to threshold. I think there is some quite good aspects to this plan, but I think that the plan requires a pretty arduous process of assessment that would apply to clubs, groups, organisations for, relatively small amount of funding in some cases that might discourage these organisations from participating in a complex application process. So I guess my question is, I've got two questions. Firstly, can you comment on what threshold would apply to the type of investment required pursuant to this plan, if there is a threshold?
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the question. So through the policy, it allows for relativity in the assessment of business cases and evidence around investment. So through the implementation working group, we'll come up with a framework that assesses back against, the size and quantum of investment being sought, and seeks to provide a process whereby staff will be able to apply a realistic lens across investment being sought to make sure that community groups aren't being asked for too much information for relatively small investment levels.
Who's on that working group? What's the timing for the report back of that exercise? You're asking me to back this on trust, lacking the information, because I just think there needs to be, I think this is the kind of plan that needs to be a plan that applies to 7-figure investments. I don't think this needs to apply for the small stuff, but actually the groups that are affected by this are groups that are having to negotiate through much smaller sums of money, but which would be very, very difficult sums for them to raise.
Through you, Madam Chair. So the first stage of the implementation will be around the Sport and Recreation Investment Fund, being the new investment that was created through the last LTP. We'll be coming back to committee in August with the criteria and process around that fund. So that will be the first, cab off the rank in terms of applying this new policy into a council investment. That piece of work will also reference other critical pieces of policy that have been created, like the facility partnership policy, and also reflect the work that the sports sector has done with the Auckland Sports Sector Facilities Priorities Plan.
One final question or maybe comment. I am totally opposed to the introduction of any sports fields charging regime that may apply to the use of sports fields and facilities. So what prohibits that in this plan? Because I think this actually provides a bit of a conduit for an approach which could result in charging.
Through the chair, this committee has already made an existing resolution about looking at a whole range of charges for sports participation. That resolution was that work was not to start and cut on that until after the election, and then the work will go back to the appropriate committee. That work will also be scoped with the relevant committee before starting, given the resolutions made in one political term to be implemented in another. I can send you a copy of that resolution. Sorry, I don't have it on me right now.
I get the resolution. My issue is what is the relationship between this plan and that? Because it kind of, to me, seems to relate.
Apologies, councillor. The sports charging was part of this plan, and there was a separate decision made to take it out and to consider it as a separate issue at a different time frame. So you made the decision on a report based on this sports investment plan. I can send you the...
And I think just, Councillor Newman's right to raise this, but we'll all remember that this was generated by the fact that we charge for basketball, we charge for badminton, we charge for indoor courts, we charge for a whole lot of sports, but we don't kind of charge for some of our outdoor fields, cricket, rugby, soccer, and part of the debate came from the community to say, where is the equity here? We're charging for overused indoor courts that a lot of our people play, and a lot of our elite sports and sports clubs get it for free on open green space. So, while we talk equity, we need to be prepared to have that debate and that discussion. And hopefully it will happen in the next term, and I won't be chairing it. Councillor Hills, you're next.
Yes, I had some questions in relation to Councillor Newman's feedback, but I'll park that. But I think it would be good if we had something saying that this doesn't have anything to do with charging for sports fields. But the other two, so the two local boards in my area, they did have some concerns, one around charging for sports fields, but I'm glad that that is not part of this plan. The other thing is around the suggestion that the 120 million is not enough, but also that is on top of the $1 billion we're investing in sports fields and facilities as well. So just want to make that clear. But are we projecting that we will be needing to bring more to the next long-term plan over an increase, or is 120 at the moment? I mean, of course, more money is always more money, but I just don't think we made it that clear that it was on top of the $1 billion within the current budget.
Through you, Madam Chair. So we do have 120 million allowed for that Facilities Investment Fund for Sport and Recreation. There is evidence from the sports sector that there's substantial demand. As you've heard earlier, there's indoor court shortfalls around the region. We know that's an expensive provision to be able to develop. I think we need to work really carefully with the sports sector to make sure that we're prioritising the facilities that will elicit the best return for sport and recreation across the region, and make sure we provide those opportunities for everyone to be active, and we can continue to work on the forecast of what that expense will be.
Just to also note, councillors, that council also has its own provision guidelines. So the Community Facilities Network Plan does have leisure provision. It is conscious of limited resources, and we are also conscious where if everyone thinks council is providing everything, then some of the private provision that does go on, so a lot of it is private provision, might stop, and there is a balancing act around all of that. We are not the only provider, and we have also set, council has adopted some guidelines for itself, and that's because it's trying to manage cost and provision and population growth.
The last question, thank you, Madam Chair. Just around So the concern from the local boards around, say the North Shore area has a lot of places that were funded by community and not necessarily by council, maybe more than others. Will there be, it's not exactly clear on how that can be kind of supported rather than seen as, okay, someone else is looking after that. We may be able to add funds and then overall the cost is lower when you've got a completely council funded facility compared to a community run one. I'm not saying we take away the community run, but obviously it doesn't exactly say that we'll be investing upward in those areas.
I suppose when you look at it from a council point of view, so we have done work together with operations looking at the shortfall in indoor courts and where that shortfall might be. There is a large number. Some of those are concentrated in different parts of the region. We also, have to have a look at cost. So, for example, if you look at the Northwest, which came to this committee in October, it looked at part of the Rodney local board area, part of the Upper Harbour local board area, part of the Henderson Massey local board area, and it It doesn't mean that every single need identified everywhere in the region can be done immediately, or that council can support some of the levels, some of the codes put forward, which is why we have a sports investment plan, which is why the codes have their priority plan, which we help them develop, which is why we try and have conversations.
Final question, Councillor Walker.
So, a couple of questions. I can appreciate this is a draft, but it's been around for a while. To what extent have the principles and practices in this investment strategy been taken into account in for example, the OLLIs that we've been considering today? The local initiatives on the part of local boards, many of which go to sport and recreation, as we know.
Sorry, through the chair, some of the same staff who contributed to writing the sports investment plan, other staff doing the One Local Initiative indicative business cases. They have looked at a range of sports code plans and council policies and plans, including the Auckland plan, the Community Facilities Network plan, the investment plan. So they do look at those, and so some of those things and the population data come back with different answers geographically. So
the other question I've got just goes to principles, and it follows from some of the information we heard today, where quite obviously around sports investments there are related issues around ecology, sustainability, climate change, particularly in terms of the huge amount of transport that's involved, transporting people to and from sporting locations. So are those principles going to be integrated into this strategy? I'm just asking them because they don't appear to be there now, and I know that we've got a climate change emergency, for example, and that heightens the relevance of that to every decision that we make.
So through the chair, no, that hasn't specifically been included in this plan, although when we are of course looking at how we implement this, we have to look at a range of relevant strategies, which will include the Ngāhere plan, recent decisions by council, our asset management plans also have to take into account things like climate change. So while this one specifically doesn't, when we're looking at the range of things in terms of applications we assess and how it's implemented, we do look at the full range.
Last question. I note that there isn't the inclusion of motorsport in this sporting investment plan. Where does motorsport sit? Because currently we have no motorsport strategy for Auckland.
Because of the climate change emergency. I'm not going to add because of the climate change emergency, but my understanding from the staff is that this work is underway.
It can be electrical and it can be biofuels,
If I
Madam
can
Chair.
just finish, councillor, I am being serious, that as part of the sports code discussions are underway with our various motorsport codes. Active is assisting, and we'd made the offer several months ago to work with the motorsport codes on their plan, particularly as it relates to Collindale Park and the need for various practice areas and performance areas, for want of a better word. So it is well underway. Any other? Oh, Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 2 quick questions. One with regards to the local board feedback. 19 local boards formally endorsed the plan, 1 endorsed the key components, and 1 only carried the agenda without feedback. That was Ōrākei. Do you know why they didn't, either formally or... No, you don't. Okay. And my second question is on Resolution C. Will you be, I know, it's a very big document, but you're putting out something by way of a public release that, tells people what this new plan is and they look at the feedback summary and whatever. Will that be just generally right across the board, or will you, talk about the fact that it's been endorsed by the local boards, or what will you actually put in that?
Through the Chair, the feedback will mostly focus on attachment B, where it identifies what submitters wrote.
What's it said, yeah.
the
So you're going to put the
response
whole
was.
attachment B as a link?
We will put that together, but what we will try and do is also say, and here were the decisions made by the committee. And so they know what's going forward, and here is a copy of what has been adopted.
Right.
And then we'll just have a plain English, probably A3 summary of all of that.
I get that, but I just want to know if someone wants to read the whole thing and they've got any questions, will they have attachment B that they can go and have a look at somewhere?
Yes.
Great.
Finally, question to Councillor Newman. Comment good?
Chair, I probably actually need to record that I won't be voting on A here, but I expect it to pass. Won't be voting on A, is that I think that this plan, absent a threshold for how it, or the point where it would apply, is incomplete for adoption. I mean, I would refer colleagues to page 29 in the open attachments, page 29, is for item 8. Question 3, does it have a better business case? Questions to consider. I mean, think about the type of projects that are covered by this. A strategic case to illustrate the need for a changed strategic fit and business needs, an economic case to show value for money, a commercial case to show that the investment will be commercially viable, a financial case to prove the investment will be affordable without available funding, a management case to show the investment will be achievable and can be successfully delivered. And then you go forward to page 32, the changes that we're making. It seems to me the outcome that's been desired is richer data, better analysis sector and staff capability development. I just want kids to go and play sport. So I kind of feel that this is an exercise in creating another policy process at a time when we're about to consider recommendations on OLLIs that really need to overcome the policy processes just to get on with things. So I am reluctant on A. If this passes, Chair, I take on board your point about charging, and this will be considered in the next term. I think the best thing is to try and ensure that those groups that use indoor facilities actually don't face the charges, as opposed to new charges that would apply to groups that use fields. So, Chair, thank you for allowing me to say those things.
Thank you. Right, no other speakers. I'm happy to... Oh, Councillor Simpson?
Look, I think I'd just like to kind of make my 10 cents worth on that as well. the question that was asked before, and I just I hope it's a comment and a clarification, is that there are parts of this report that do concern me, and that's one of them. It looks as if, you know, money is the driver here, and it shouldn't be. But having said that, am I correct in saying that actually we have taken that away? We haven't said that that is the driver anymore. We've just said that in theory, these are all the things that we will look at, and it might not be the outcome. It is just one of the things that's, I mean, Councillor Clow, you remember, I've been here myself and spoken against sports field charges, you know, when I was local board chair. Yeah, and got that across the line, and I actually haven't changed my view. But having said that, you know, to vote against the good things, that's a real issue. He raises a very good point, but we have taken that out, haven't we? As far as any outcome discussion.
Sportsfield, the discussion and the policy components of this are currently not predicated on Sportsfield charges. We need to be really clear about that.
Yes.
So
Well,
that's for
Well, I'm
next
happy to
term.
support the good stuff, but I'm very clear that we haven't put it as a resolution, and maybe we should.
Well, I just, if it's not there, as soon as we put it in the resolution, it becomes a thing. So my old lady advice is, you know, don't put a thing in the resolution that isn't a thing in the report, because it just, the community go, what are these people smoking? You know, this is weird stuff. So, you know, to be absolutely blunt, it's not in there. Let's not make a deal about it. So let's work on this as our piece of policy, acknowledging that next term we will be talking to our community about the yes or no of charging for sports fields, and our community will tell us what they feel. So no other speakers. I'm going to move the recommendations. Is you happy to second, Councillor Filipaina? I'll put those and acknowledging, so Councillor Newman, you would like your vote recorded against A. That will be noted. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. And thank you to the staff. This is hard and complex stuff, and I really would like to respect the work that you're doing on this.